And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious episode of the Assembly Call. As today, your Indiana Hoosiers defeat Eastern Michigan 87-67 in what was unquestionably the most impressive 40-minute performance by the Indiana Hoosiers all year. This is an Eastern Michigan team that, when a lot of people looked at the schedule ahead of the season, really looked like probably the fifth toughest game during the non-conference stretch. A solid team with a lot of experience, a really good interior player, and they had played Arkansas State and Howard about evenly to what Indiana did. And I think a lot of us came into this game thinking this could be a tough 40-minute dogfight. You know, you look at the name Eastern Michigan, maybe you think it's going to be a blowout, but don't think that, because this could be a tough game. And Indiana just really played solid. Nothing real spectacular about today's game, but they played solid, limited the turnovers, kind of the cliche, hit singles and doubles instead of going for the home runs. And outside of a really short stretch near the beginning of the game where Indiana had a couple of turnovers on some home run passes, they just played solid, got the ball inside against a really tough zone, and just didn't have any poor stretches. And for a team that has really struggled to be consistent within games from half to half, it was so nice to see. And frankly, it was nice to see after Eastern Michigan shot lights out again, another opponent going nuts from three-point range, even with hands in their faces. That came back to earth a little bit in the second half, and you saw what Indiana was able to do, which is basically outscore Eastern Michigan by 15 in the second half and win going away. We are excited to break it down for you here on this edition of the Assembly Call. I am your host, Jared Morris. I will be joined momentarily by my co-host, Andy Bottoms. And let's start tonight's show as we start every show, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. Really a lot of options to choose from, but I want to take you back to 6 minutes and 20 seconds left in the first half. And this was after Colin Hartman had come in and really given the Hoosiers a jolt. And when that happened, I thought, something really spectacular is going to have to happen for Colin Hartman to be unseated for the banner moment. As he came in, had a great defensive possession, then drained a three. But frankly, I thought something really spectacular happened right after that. And I think it was really indicative of why Indiana has started to play better. And it's because they're buying into what Archie Miller is trying to get them to do. So soon after that play by Colin Hartman, over on the offensive end, actually, Devontae Green is dribbling, lost his dribble. It looked like it was going to be a turnover. And out of nowhere, JaJuan Morgan just comes streaking into the camera, dives on the floor. It felt like he dove almost halfway across the floor, but he dives across the timeline and gets the loose ball. And I think he ended up getting fouled and knocking down a couple of free throws. But, we've seen Archie Miller get really upset. I mean, visibly upset, throwing towels, calling timeouts, yanking guys out of the game when guys don't get on the floor for loose balls. And this was, just the craziest example of a guy sprinting, diving for a loose ball. It almost looked like, one of those loose ball drills where the coach just rolls the ball out and you go and dive for it. And I just thought, it was also indicative of Juwan Morgan, coming off of the best box score game of his career. He didn't do a whole lot of box score things today, but he continued to lead with his toughness and with his energy and with his grit. And I just thought seeing him get on the floor and seeing that grit, not only was it a great play that turned into points for Indiana and prevented a turnover, but to me, it was just another sign of a team that is starting to buy into what the coach is selling. And I think that's why Indiana won this game by 20, because not only were they getting on the floor, but they limited turnovers, played solid, and just went out there and played an Archie Miller type game. And that is great to see. And another reason why there was so much progress and why it looks like Indiana is now ready for that 5-game gauntlet when, just as recently as a week ago, we all looked at that and thought, man, what is Indiana going to do for these games? So an excellent play by JaJuan Morgan. And in a game where Indiana really did a lot of the little things right, I thought that was a great microcosm of it. All right, and our banner moment, as always, brought to you by our friends at Hoosier Proud, an Indiana-based T-shirt and apparel company that is by Hoosiers for Hoosiers. And our friends at Hoosier Proud have an amazing discount going on right now. I got an email about it earlier today. Normally, you get a 15% discount as an Assembly Call listener when you use your promo code Assembly. Well, between now and Monday, so Black Friday to Cyber Monday, use the promo code Hoosier Holidays because you get 30% off. That's 30% off everything. The Assembly Call t-shirts, all their, officially licensed IU gear, their Hoosier State themed gear, all of it. Use Hoosier Holidays and you get 30% off. And Andy, you were just telling me that you actually used the promo code earlier today to pick something up at HoosierProud.com.
I did. This is real life examples of how it can benefit you in your life. I got on. I had not had a chance to order one of their officially licensed IU shirts yet, so I went on and grabbed one of those this morning. The other thing that I'm always struck by on there is a lot of these places, they reel you in with a good deal, and then they try to screw you on the shipping. Shipping, I think for what I got was like $2.95 or something like that. So definitely affordable from a shipping perspective. Already got an email that it went out, and so have gotten multiple shirts from there, all quality stuff, and was excited to get the offer code this morning in my email because it was a good reminder that I need to go get a shirt.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's why we love working with Hoosier Proud, because they're great. So again, go to HoosierProud.com, use the promo code Hoosier Holidays, and you will get 30% off your entire order. All right, well, it is time to move the ball, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team, and that is Andy Bottoms. As unfortunately, I don't know, we joke sometimes about Ryan. He lives in San Diego. Goes on a trip to Italy. Now he's in Maui, and he got stranded in Maui at the airport, had a couple of flights delayed, so he is not able to be with us today. So hopefully he gets back safely and soundly, and I'm sure he'll be back for the Duke game because he wouldn't miss that for anything. But Andy, you are here, so let's do the Bottoms line, brought to us by IUtickets.shop, the URL to use when you want the best prices on IU basketball tickets.
Yeah, typically, I mean, you feel bad for somebody who gets stranded somewhere in an airport situation, but Ryan somehow lucked his way into getting stranded in Maui. So sympathy is at a relatively low level from Jared and I at this point for him. But at any rate, I mean, so many good things to talk about in the game, and whether that's Josh Newkirk's play, which I'm sure we'll get to. Robert Johnson shooting the ball well again. Freddie McSwain with good minutes off the bench. McRoberts with some huge minutes. The McLineup made its triumphant return and actually was effective.
It was +2, I think,
in a game. Unbelievable. So I guess that probably is, maybe points me in the direction of really talking about what a team win this was. I mean, 11 guys played, 10 of them scored at least 3 points, 10 of them grabbed at least 1 rebound, 9 of them had at least 1 assist. And really, when you look overall, 13 or 19 assists on 31 made field goals. They shot the ball extremely well from 3-point range. And the ones they made, while you could say this isn't going to be a great outside shooting team over the course of the season, which I don't think it will be, shot the ball well, they were all good shots within the flow of the offense, movement and things like that. And that, to me, is really where the team aspect of things came in. They didn't turn the ball over, but it was more for me the ball movement and just the approach to attacking that zone. I won't blame anybody if they were, kept up at night leading up to this game by the thought of a team playing, strictly a zone defense against IU and wondering how they would react. And I thought, from the opening possession where a couple passes and they get a dunk, it really throughout when they played through the interior of that zone, moved the ball quickly and didn't really force things into the gaps off the dribble drive. They were really effective in scoring, and they did a good job of taking care of the ball, despite what Jess Settle said at halftime of the game. And it was a really good team win. You saw the approach they were able to put in on a quick turnaround with just 2 days between games, and they came out and executed that really well. And I think the entire team gets a lot of credit for that. And I think on a day when so many guys played well, and while we've talked about, hey, we've done a good job on the show not going up and down the roster of talking, I probably wouldn't be all that opposed to it if we ended up doing that tonight with maybe a couple exceptions, but really everybody that came in, did something well, made a big play, either offensively, defensively, keeping a loose ball alive. And, doesn't have a superstar. That is not surprising to anyone at this point. The first few games of the season have done little to change anybody's thought. And with that being the case, they're going to have to play well collectively as a unit. And we've talked on other games that they're not going to be successful if everybody isn't bought in and everybody isn't playing the way that they need to play and playing as one. And they did that today, and you saw the result. And as much as it was probably disappointing to only be up 5 at halftime because, Minnie was shooting out of his mind in the first half. I mean, outside of that, they're up double digits at halftime against a good team. And so they really took it to them in the second half. It got within 2 points, and they ripped off I think a 21-5 run at some point to do that. And I thought there were a number of guys who contributed to that. So to me, this was a true team victory where you can look up and down the roster at guys who played really well. And I think that, in addition to playing the 40 most complete minutes of basketball we've seen from them this season, is a great sign heading into a really tough stretch.
Absolutely. All right, you are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Jared Morris here with Andy Bottoms, breaking down Indiana's 87-67 victory over Eastern Michigan. And Andy, I agree with you. I think we need to go up and down the box score, and we need to talk about a lot of the individuals, because so many individuals had important performances. But let's start off by talking about the coach. I mean, I think Archie Miller deserves a lot of credit, as you mentioned, for having his team ready to play on a quick turnaround, obviously over a holiday break. I mean, this team came out and they were really locked in, really engaged from the start. We've talked about how does this team start. They came out and scored the first 5 points of each half. And actually had a lead at the under 16-minute timeout in the first half, which was nice to see, and hasn't really been happening. So I thought that was really good. I think it's kind of incredible that, to watch a team play basketball that knows how to attack a zone. That is extremely refreshing. And I thought inside of the game, he made some very interesting decisions. I thought he managed Deron Davis pretty well, kind of managing his time with, when Deron Davis picked up fouls. And I thought when Deron was on the court, even though he played limited minutes, I thought Indiana really focused on getting him the ball and getting involved, so that he was able to be really effective. And you could tell at the start of the second half, there was a concerted effort to go to him when he was out there. But then I think the most important decision Archie made is he limited Devontae Green's minutes today. And we've talked about kind of the bad Devontae, good Devontae dichotomy that we've been seeing. And today I thought Devontae was very poor. I thought he made, he tried to make some home run passes when they weren't there, made a couple of other bad passes, was not containing dribble penetration, which Archie talked about as being a real focus for the team. And Devontae only played 12 minutes. And it may not be a coincidence that Indiana did such a good job of limiting turnovers, again, only having the 8 turnovers for the game and playing more consistently when its most volatile player wasn't on the court. And obviously, it's a little bit easier to do that when you have Josh Newkirk and Robert Johnson really shooting well, because I think some of the biggest benefits Devontae has brought during his good stretches, or frankly, he's just made shots when other guys aren't making them. But Indiana didn't need that today. They needed solid play. Devontae wasn't giving it, and Archie was not afraid to sit him down when he wasn't doing what he needed him to do. So I thought, a lot of decisions, a lot of reasons to give Archie some kudos, but that one with Devontae especially is one that stood out for me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Not starting him in the second half, a right move. I mean, Al Durham continues to take great care of the basketball. Add 30 more minutes to his 100 minutes of turnover-free play after tonight with 5 assists and no turnovers. And I thought he deserved to start the second half. That made total sense to me. And then even Devontae, when he came back in, tried to make a cross-court pass. The first time got, hit right back into his lap, and then continued to try to make the same pass again immediately thereafter. And I don't know that he played after he got taken out following that. There was a sequence in the first half where he fell for 2 straight shot fakes, neither of which was all that much of a shot fake, quite honestly. And, if we've talked about this before, and I wrote it up in the postgame email from last game. I mean, he can do things that other guys cannot do on the roster. But
he also does things that some other guys don't do, when he's
other guys won't. Yeah. So it's a little bit, there's a little bit of give and take in that. And I thought, tonight he just didn't have it, didn't really seem into it, took some poor shots, tried to drive between 2 guys into the zone when good opportunities, when they move the ball, inside out, and did things well that way. So, kind of a frustrating game from him, but I think if you want to, take that and put a positive spin on it, I think it's that there were other guys who were willing and able to step up in his place that weren't there. And like you said, it's easy to say that when, Robert Johnson and Josh Newkirk combined for 35 points, but Josh McRoberts came in and gave some good minutes off the bench, and or Zach McRoberts. No, Josh. Anyway.
It's Zach.
Easy to second guess yourself after multiple. Yeah, so Zach McRoberts came in and played well. I thought you saw just a number of guys be able to pick up the slack when he wasn't playing well. And I think when you start to go back and think about that, he does things other guys can't do. Well, all right, now there's some other guys who are showing that ability to continue to come in and play under control. And I think that's going to be difficult. And I want to see him respond to that the next game, because I didn't love the shot of him on the bench late in the game when, Hartman is standing right next to him, up still really into the game and clapping, and he kind of looked like he was sitting there with a towel on his head, feeling bad for himself. So, but I, absolutely deserved the playing time that guys got tonight was warranted. And I think that's all that you want to see. I think we've seen that throughout the season so far, and that kind of consistent approach to it It's something that everybody has clamored for a while, in addition to a team that looked like they, know what to do against the zone, which again, we saw tonight, which, was a very welcome change, and one I'm happy to get used to going forward from here.
By the way, let's talk about Colin Hartman here for just a minute. I mean, it was awesome seeing him back out there. He plays 6 minutes. He obviously comes in. I mentioned the great defense that he played while he was out there, especially at the start, and then he drains that three. Everybody goes nuts, which to me I thought was like the most predictable beginning ever. He comes in, gets a big ovation, drains a three. And
so predictable, in fact, that you did predict it before the game.
Yeah. I did predict it, yes. But then, they put the stat up there. What is Indiana is 42-21, I think, with Hartman, 47-20 with Hartman, 21-20 in games without him. And then you look at it today, he only plays 6 minutes, and Indiana wins by 20 in a game when they haven't been consistent. So I don't know if it's just a coincidence with Hartman, or if he has the greatest intangibles ever. Because I've seen people saying man, Indiana's really in some trouble if they're hinging their hopes this year on a guy who, has a career scoring average of 4.5 points. But I don't know, man, when you watch these games, this team sure as heck seems to play better, not just when Colin Hartman's on the floor, but just when he's playing. And obviously, I think, it's kind of been building to this. Indiana has played progressively better, and, they were due to have a game like this if they were going to keep growing. But look, all I know is Indiana has the record it does when Colin Hartman plays. He came out there, played today, played well in the time that he was out there, and I feel a heck of a lot more confident when he's playing. I don't know, maybe the team does too. I mean, I can't totally explain that record, but there's got to be something to it because the team just seemed more comfortable today, and maybe having Colin Hartman available to play helps put everybody at ease a little bit.
Oh, he came on the floor and they immediately wanted a 7-0 run. So, at some point, maybe it's not a coincidence. Yeah, I thought he played well. I thought he made it in the middle of the zone. Some of them led to guys getting it up with 1 assist. Consistently made good decisions, and even if shots didn't go down, was setting guys up. Even he just was and knew exactly where he was going to go with the ball. This is what you need to do, because let the defense react and him make a play. And so I thought he did a really good job of that throughout, even though it was only at 6.
Yeah, Andy seems to be having a little bit of Wi-Fi issues, so I don't know if the audio was a little choppy there for you, but it was for me listening to him, so maybe we'll have him hop out and come back in. But let's take a quick break, and coming up on the Assembly Call, I'm going to point out tonight's meaningful moment that you might have missed, and then we will go inside the numbers. That is next here on the Assembly Call. Stick with us. All right, you are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Jared Morris here with Andy Bottoms, and we are breaking down Indiana's very impressive 87-67 victory over the Eastern Michigan Eagles. And it is time for today's meaningful moment that you might have missed, which is brought to us today by our friends at SeatGeek. And as you know, buying tickets to sports and concerts can be complicated, but there is a better and simpler way to buy, and that is with SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to live events. And with SeatGeek's seamless mobile experience, you can buy and sell tickets in just 2 taps. SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices, fully guaranteed. And there is nothing quite like seeing your favorite team or musician in person, and SeatGeek will get you closer to the action for a great value. I have the SeatGeek app on my phone. I also use their desktop website, and it is by far the easiest way that I have found to shop for tickets. And if I was going to be anywhere in the vicinity of Bloomington coming up this week, I would definitely be right there on SeatGeek right now looking for tickets to that Duke game, because whereas that felt like kind of an inevitable blowout loss just about 2 weeks ago, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a lot better about it today. So if you want to get tickets to that game, go to SeatGeek, check out the IU page, and look and see what the prices are for that Duke game. And best of all, listeners to the Assembly Call get $20 off of their first SeatGeek purchase. All you have to do is download the SeatGeek app, enter the promo code ASSEMBLY, ASSEMBLY, and you will get $20 off of your first SeatGeek purchase. Again, that's promo code ASSEMBLY, ASSEMBLY. All right, let's go to today's meaningful moment that you may have missed, and a lot to choose from today. I mentioned this at the beginning, but I want to talk about the stretch of play from De'Ron Davis at the beginning of the second half, because again, Durham was kind of in foul trouble, didn't get to play as many minutes, but this was a big game for Durham because, James Thompson, Eastern Michigan's big man, is a really good player, an experienced player, big guy with some size and some toughness. You could kind of call him like a poor man's Angel Delgado a little bit. He's clearly not on that level, but he's a double-double machine, a really smart player. And Durham kind of shrunk from the challenge against Angel Delgado. But today, I think he really rose to the challenge and played well in the minutes that he was out there and helped Indiana maintain an advantage in points in the paint. And I thought what he did at the start of the second half was really important because Indiana came out, and he mentioned that Al Durham started over Devontae Green, and the Hoosiers came out and made a concerted effort to get it inside. I mean, that was the goal all day, against this zone, was to play inside out. And Durham is really good against the zone because he can both score, obviously, when he gets in a one-on-one situation because he has such great post moves, but he's also such a terrific passer. And so on those 3 possessions, the first pass went into Durham, he scored. And then on the next 2 possessions, it went to Durham. One was a little bit of a high-low action. I think the other one was a kick out for a 3-pointer. And Indiana, 3 straight possessions, 3 buckets, 2 points, 2 assists for Durham Davis. So they're going inside, and good things happened. And we have seen Indiana as a program struggle to get the ball inside to a big man, even when they've really wanted to. But today, Indiana was able to do it, and Durham really took advantage and flashed those versatile skills that he has down low. But what I also liked from Durham is, he picked up his 3rd foul soon thereafter, and it was that double foul where he's just playing really physical defense with Thompson. I thought kind of a bogus call, but whatever, that was the call. And you could just see how ticked off Durham was. I think he was both frustrated at the call, but also a little bit frustrated at himself for picking up a foul because we know how much he's trying to play without fouling. And I just thought, on a team where a lot of the guys are a little bit emotionless, and that's not necessarily bad, it was kind of nice to see some fire from a player, just his attitude, the disappointment, when that happened, because, and I didn't think it was, kind of a bad attitude type thing. I just thought he was frustrated at not being able to do what he had really tried to do there in terms of playing defense without fouling. So I was just impressed both with what I saw from Durham skill wise, and, from whatever you can take from some body language analysis. I just liked it. I liked that fire. Because that to me was a guy who really cares and is really trying hard to do things right. And if he continues to string together performances like this one and put that Seton Hall game in the rear view, he's going to still have a really big season for Indiana. And so I thought that stretch of play was really impressive.
It's funny. You just see how important he is. And I mentioned this, both the fouls he picked up in the first half were kind of off the ball or not really in some regard. And it just, that's the part that's frustrating. I mean, and tonight he ends up with 11 points in 13 minutes. I think he had 7 points in 7 minutes in the second half. And so you see how efficient he can be even against another solid post player. And he did play well when they played through him, made a lot of good decisions, kind of like the same thing I said with Hartman. He made good decisions when he got the ball in the post, whether it was scoring for himself or setting up other teammates. And, if he can find a way to take that piece out of his game, and he's certainly going to need to do that against another, Duke team coming in with a ton of size on Wednesday. And I agree. I like to see the emotion that he showed there because probably frustration that came from, for a group of guys that we haven't seen show a ton of emotion on the court in recent years. It was kind of good to see. I just didn't want him to, smash and break his hand or anything hitting on the floor, but it was exciting to see him. It's good to see that. It's good to see that guys care. It's good to see that they get frustrated, recognize their own mistakes and things like that. And you can kind of see that call brewing. They were banging across the lane, and then the ultimate, I don't really know who to call it on. So I'm going to call both guys foul from an official whose name I do not recall, but made a number of poor calls over the course of the game.
Almost as bad as the Blarge from last year.
Almost.
Yeah, almost.
Yep.
Okay, one other meaningful stretch I want to talk about, and Andy, this can segue us into talking about the really terrific play from Indiana's senior guards. Robert Johnson was pretty quiet from a scoring perspective early in the game, and I thought not necessarily that he was passive, but just didn't get a lot of opportunities to shoot. Also probably didn't probe the zone quite as much as Josh Newkirk and Al Durham did, both of whom I was very impressed by. And I think that's part of the reason why Al had 5 assists, Josh had 4, and Robert only had 2. But shoot, you look up at the end of the game, and Robert led the team in scoring with 18. And a big reason for that is because he scored 10 points late in the game. And I think we're now seeing, basically 2 straight games. I think against South Florida and Arkansas State, Robert hit a dagger 3-pointer late that basically told both those teams, you're not coming back. It's over. That's it. And I thought he did it again today, because Indiana was up by 18, 20 points late. And then, Eastern Michigan made a little like 4 or 5 point run, kind of cut it back a little bit. They even cut it to 73-60. And this is when Robert basically went on his 10-point run, hit a couple buckets, hit a couple of threes, and it pushed Indiana's lead right back out. And it was kind of like Rob saying, okay, you guys carried us this far. I'm the senior. Let me step up and make some shots. Let's just end this, remind Eastern Michigan where they're playing, who they're playing against, and let's go home and get ready for Duke. And I thought that was a really impressive stretch from Rob, and I thought it was impressive how he didn't really force the issue today. Today, to me, seemed like a guy who was maybe a little bit more comfortable in his role scoring. And he was 6 of 8, 4 of 6 from downtown, shot it with more confidence. And so that was good to see. And then obviously we talked about what Newkirk did. I thought it was by far his best performance of the year. It looked like late season Josh Newkirk from last year. He finishes with 17 points, 4 assists, and 3 boards. But I'll tell you what, there were a couple defensive plays that he made in the first half that led to steals. And then the block that he had late for a guy who I haven't thought from the eye test has looked as engaged defensively so far this year. I thought he was really locked in defensively. Now, Indiana still struggled a little bit containing dribble penetration from the guard position, and that, it's going to be an issue this year. But I thought Josh's hustle allowed him to get a couple of steals, a block shot that were really important. So both of those guys, really, really big stretch, and especially for Rob, I thought that stretch late was really meaningful.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I definitely thought that was a big stretch from him. There was another shot that he made in the first half. They got down 10 to IU got down 10-6, and he took a 3 that was probably a little bit further out than most everybody felt good about after the way he shot the ball most of the season and knocked that down just to kind of keep him from, kind of giving away what they had. But yeah, I mean, second half, 12 points, didn't miss a shot at all, either from the free throw line or the field. 1 rebound, 1 assist, no turnovers on that side, and played 15 minutes. I thought he was able to get some rest at a couple key spots during this game, and I think that was important for him as well to be able to finish strong. But he made good decisions, made some shots going to the basket, a nice floater, and did some things there. Nice, took a shot fake and took a dribble in and made a mid-range jump shot, which is something we hadn't seen from him a lot this year. So to get his confidence back, which obviously is important. As for Nuke, I tweeted this out at some point. You just feel good for a guy like that, and we're all been overly critical of him. It's easy to be critical of him. People to black line and say they need to take a scholarship away and silly stuff like that. But I just a really good performance from him, and took really took a lot of shots. I mean, there's not going to be a lot of games where you're going to feel great about him leading the team in field goal attempts. But I don't know that there were too many that he took that were completely out of control, short of the one that he threw up on the rim on the baseline just to beat the shot clock that I think Juwan or Durham cleaned up the miss on. But really, he took good shots and showed some of that 3-point shooting ability that he showed late in the season. And at a certain point, I think he was feeling it and took one from pretty deep that was a heat check. But other than that, really shot the ball well and but played under control. 1 turnover for him, 4 assists. A really good play. He had the play where he chased the guy down and blocked a potential layup for Eastern Michigan. IU wasn't able to get the rebound, but really hustling. And even at that point, I think the game was IU had started to pull away. So I thought a lot of good things from him. Encouraging to see him really bounce back. He had those few good minutes against Arkansas State, and then really didn't do a whole lot the rest of the game. And I thought played well tonight, and in some ways allowed Archie to try to send that message to Devontae, because if Josh Newkirk isn't playing as well as he is, I'm not sure that we see the playing time doled out. It was, but a really encouraging performance for him. Happy for him to come in and play so well. But a good all-around game. 4 assists, 3 rebounds, 2 steals, and a block in 31 minutes, and was the best in 14, at least based on the box score that I'm looking at here.
Yeah. All right. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Jared Morris here with Andy Bottoms, breaking down Indiana's 20-point victory over Eastern Michigan. Andy, let's go inside the numbers, and let's start with the 3-point shooting allowed, because, again, it's another opponent that comes in and shoots a good percentage against Indiana. Eastern Michigan was 9 for 21 for the game, but I believe they were just 2 of 7 in the second half.
2 for 10.
I got
2 for 10.
2 for 10. Yeah, because they were 7 of 11 in the first half. That's right. Indiana was 7 of 14 in the first half. half. So they're 7-11 in the first half. And it just kind of feels like deja vu all over again. But so the numbers are what they are, right? And Eastern Michigan ends up shooting a pretty good percentage, even though it wasn't good in the second half. But I don't know about you. I felt a lot better about the defense today than I did say against Indiana State. Like, I know Indiana State shot lights out, but I also felt like they got some even though they made some tough shots, they got some open looks, and Indiana just seemed confused on a lot of possessions. I thought today, Indiana was defending shooters with more control, not as many guys flying past, on the closeouts. There were a couple examples of that, but I thought there were fewer just breakdowns and wide open threes. And frankly, Eastern Michigan had one guy, Minnie, that just got hot and hit several shots with a hand in his face. But I thought, and I said this on the halftime report, look, they're shooting really well, but if Indiana keeps defending like this, you got to think that percentage is going to go down. And sure enough, it did. And so I think that, that number, that overall number, it's not going to help the season-long percentage, and it's still a concern, but I felt better about it. And I know that Indiana gave up 1.08 points per possession in the second half. What was it for the game? I think it was still over a point per possession, and so that number isn't going to be good. In fact, it was 1.13. So that number isn't good. And I think part of that stemmed from, again, Indiana, really struggling to defend some dribblers, and obviously allowing 21 free throws for Eastern Michigan isn't good. They actually shot more free throws than Indiana did. But from 3-point defense perspective, I didn't think the defense was as bad as the numbers today. And that's maybe, one of the first times we've been able to say that this year.
Yeah, I agree. Minnie made some really tough shots in the first half, and sure, there were times where you got to stop helping off of him at some point. But yeah, he made a number of shots with a hand in his face, and I think it was Zach Osterman. I forget, maybe it was somebody else who said, he took a few of where the look on his face was like, well, let's try this and see if it works out. So, and they did more often than not in the first half. But water found its level after the break, and I thought by and large they did a better job. I think there's still the biggest issue that I saw today was just communication on some of the ball screens and things like that, where you'd either have both guys go back, and when they would try to switch back, it just was kind of clunky. But I thought overall they did a good job. And the other thing they did better in the second half, quite frankly, was rebound the ball better. The second half rebounding, I'll have to try to find the box score here, but IU was down on the glass after the first half, but the second half they out rebounded Eastern Michigan 21-10. Yep. So another, important, I don't know if you call it.
A lot of those were offensive too, because Indiana had an offensive rebounding percentage of 67%, which is obviously quite good.
Not bad, not bad. So yeah, I thought that was good. The turnovers, I think there's probably not a game that happens that we're going to come on here and not talk about that. 8 turnovers for the game, 3 over the first, I think less than 5 minutes of the first half, and then none the rest of the way in the first half, and just 5 in the second. So be curious to see kind of when those happen and things like that. But I thought those were, those stood out. They had a really good advantage in points in the paint, 34-20, which is kind of hard to do against a team that plays so much zone and a team that has a really good big guy to kind of balance that out. So, I thought they did well there. And so, yeah, they continue to play positive. 29 bench points. That continues to be a strength again.
And it was the balance of those. It wasn't like one guy came in and scored 25 points. Yep. Freddie scored 10, and on down the line, you just got contributions from a lot of guys, which was impressive.
Again, this team doesn't have a superstar, and there may be, you're going to have to figure out, the offense. I think in a perfect world, we've seen that kind of runs through Duran, and in a late game scenario, it might be Robert Johnson who's taking the shot, but there's no superstar in this team. I don't think anybody's going to argue that. And so they have to have this kind of balance and continue to get production off the bench. And I thought they did a really solid job of that today. And the 2-point defense was good again, against the team that's got, good. Thompson was 4 of 10 from the floor over the course of the game. And I think you saw, from that, sorry, I don't know if this is inside the numbers or not. I'm just kind of taking this and run with it. So,
hey, go with it.
We'll continue to. One of the things they cut into that kind of the huddle against Seton Hall, and Archie talked to them about really wanting to front the post against Delgado, and they came out and they basically just didn't do it. Either they didn't know how, or they didn't, couldn't execute that on the fly. But that was a real part of the game plan today, and I thought they did a lot better job of that. Newkirk had the one where he kind of flew in like a free safety from behind and doing that, but you always saw the guy on the backside, the weak side defender, where he was, so that if that pass came, that they could come up and challenge it. And I thought McSwain did a really good job of trying to use his body. He's given up size from a height standpoint, but I thought he did a good job using his body, and that contributed to the good 2-point defense as well. And so I don't think IU had as many block shots tonight as they did before, just 4 as opposed to 9 in each of the last 2 games. But the 2-point defense continued to be really good. And I thought their approach to how they guarded Thompson in the post was a big factor in that.
Yeah. All right. Coming up on the Assembly Call, we continue our breakdown of Indiana's 87-67 victory over Eastern Michigan. That is next here on the Assembly Call. Stick with us. You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Catch us live immediately following every IU basketball game and every Thursday night on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall. You can also view all of our live broadcasts right on our homepage at assemblycall.com. I am Jared Morris here with Andy Bottoms, and we are breaking down Indiana's best performance of the season, an 87-67 victory over Eastern Michigan. Andy, let's talk a little bit about Freddie McSwain and Aljamain Durham, a couple of guys who came off the bench and I thought really provided some good minutes for Indiana. Freddie finished with 10 points. He had 9 boards, 4 of them offensive. And, that it was nice that he was able to make 4 of his 6 free throws. Obviously, he missed the big alley-oop. And again, I think Freddie is going to be a guy that, if you look at points scored to potential points, there's always going to feel like there's, kind of a big gap there because he's going to, maybe fumble a pass away and not connect on a dunk, that kind of thing. And it's just, look, Freddie is not the perfect basketball player, but he is a role player who really plays his role well. And it's noticeable when he doesn't. He didn't against Seton Hall and didn't play very much. He didn't against South Florida, but he got back to doing Freddie McSwain things against Arkansas State and did it again today. And, look, when Deron Davis can only play 13 minutes in a game where you're going up against some really tough big men, while Deron played really well in those 13 minutes, that's 27 other minutes that have to be accounted for. And for Freddie McSwain to be able to come in and contribute some points and lead you again in offensive rebounds and get a block shot and be able to play certainly not perfect defense and not even great defense, but passable defense without fouling, that's what you want from him. And I think we have to be careful with our expectations of Freddie, but if you're expecting Freddie to be a role player who comes in and just does those things, then I think you have to be happy with what he did today. And so I thought a solid effort from Freddie. And then obviously Al, again, the 5 assists, the no turnovers, he continues to just be such a solid player. And I think what's interesting about Al and something to really watch, and one of the reasons why he doesn't commit turnovers is he is so adept at throwing the ball away from the defense. And I know that sounds like kind of a basic concept, but watch some of the passes that Robert Johnson and Devontae Green in particular make when they turn the ball over. They are really trying to thread the needle with the defense and or just kind of making a pass on the perimeter where they're kind of throwing it in the even space, where the defender can get his hands on it. And Al is so good at throwing the pass away from the defense or over the defense, when he does that little lob pass. And he does it in a way that doesn't really get, guys out of their rhythm, and he doesn't necessarily do it when it's a shooting situation, but he smartly does it when, you're trying to reverse the ball and get it over there. And so you're not, taking a shot away because the guy's having to wait for it. But that's one of the reasons why he does that. And I think it's really nice to see a guy who's just a freshman be able to do that. So, we mentioned the bench, Andy, and those obviously were 2 guys who really provided some good minutes off the bench, 2 guys who know what their role is on the team. They fill it, and for the most part, don't try to do too much, and that's exactly what Archie needed from them today.
Well, and I think the other common thread between those guys, and you alluded to this, is that they can affect the game without scoring. And I think that's, this team needs points. There's no question about that. But and they combined for 16 points. But it isn't to say that they didn't or they can't score points. But when you look at the second half for Al, I thought he played incredibly well. And then you look at the box score, and but had 2 assists and no turnovers in 14 minutes and just played a really solid half. Was, got guys the ball where they could succeed, made the pass that led to the pass that made the shot, and just continues to, be so poised and level-headed in the game. Had another offhand floater this game. So, again, just continues to make smart decisions. Your point about the passing is a good one. And then McSwain, just activity level with him. I mean, if more often than not, good things are going to happen. And I thought he actually did a good job, caught some tie. Never going to be a guy that has great hands, but I thought he did better in that regard today. And there was one where the ball was kind of, squirting along the baseline, and he was the guy who was able to pick it up and ended up getting fouled shortly thereafter. And he was another guy who got a chance to make plays in the middle of the zone, made a nice turnaround, kind of drive to the basket in the second half. And I thought he played really well throughout. And as you said, when Duran's playing 13 minutes, somebody's got to eat up a good chunk of the others, and he was a guy who ate up almost all of the others. Led the team in rebounding had 9. The next closest guy had 5. So a really strong performance, really active. Love the way that he battled on defense, giving up a ton of size, but really battled well in that regard. And I thought played certainly career high in points for him, but one of his better games. And nice to see him string together a couple of good performances. I think in some ways, looks a lot like the team in that regard, as they've strung together a couple good ones, and they certainly are going to need him against Duke.
I would like to see Freddie be a little bit more committed to getting up and down the court faster in transition opportunities. I do think that kind of lacks with him a little bit. But again, I think overall it was a good performance. And let's talk a little bit about Justin Smith, who, again, limited minutes, but once again proved to be a really effective player in the zone. Had 6 points and 5 boards in those minutes. Continues to just be a solid player and show you what you want from a freshman. And that, kind of the same thing with Zach McRoberts. Again, he came in, played 8 minutes, probably got some of those minutes that maybe a guy like Devontae Green would have gotten in the past, as Green and Curtis Jones only combined for 18 minutes. And Justin Smith and Zach McRoberts, they combined for 20. And you might not have thought that coming into the game. But I thought I thought he earned more playing time. And that's not some kind of overreaction like Zach McRoberts needs to be, playing a ton or even be in the rotation, but he hadn't played at all, right? And so I think what he showed today is in a situation where Archie needs to turn to him, whether it's because of guys in foul trouble or guys just not hustling, frankly, or needing a spark, you can count on Zach McRoberts because he came in, was able to score a couple of buckets, grabbed a couple of rebounds, didn't have any big defensive breakdowns, just did the kind of things that you want. And so I don't think he'll play every game, but I have to think that what Archie Miller takes away from this game is, if I need Zach McRoberts in the future, he's going to go out there and play my style of basketball. Duly noted for the next time I need you.
Yeah, it's funny. A couple of quotes about Al. I missed the opportunity to put this one in, but one of Archie's quotes after the game was about Al leading the team in plus minus through 6 games. That's really rare for a freshman to have that type of impact, and one of the reasons is he doesn't turn the ball over. Amen to that.
Yeah.
And then on McRoberts, he goes, Zach in particular, what a great teammate. He should be in there a lot more. So perhaps what you just suggested will happen. But I thought, McRoberts was more active, less reticent to actually shoot the ball when he was in there. And, 4 points, 3 rebounds, an assist in 8 minutes. That's not too bad. And he came in and was in the right spot. I think, didn't love what he was getting from Devontae or Curtis Jones and put Zach in, and he did a nice job. And then Justin Smith, 2 points in 12 minutes. That's not too bad at all. Again, was active on the offensive and defensive glass. Finished up one of the clunkier fast breaks that I think I've ever seen with a nice dunk. And
the dunk was nice though.
The dunk was nice. I have no idea how the ball actually got its way up the court, but it did work out well in the end. So
Al Durham things, man. Al Durham things.
So no, I thought I thought he played well. I was actually a little bit surprised I didn't see more of him given the zone, but I think other guys were playing well from there. I think part of that's a function of Hartman being back to get a few minutes, and they had other guys do well from the middle of the zone. But Smith continued to do well, hit a nice, I think he hit a nice face-up jumper as well in the game, and I think continues to see he's going to be able to expand his game out, and I think over the course of time is going to be able to really step out and hit some threes. He's got a nice shooting touch when he has put him up there. So performance from him. So the rotation would seem like it was tightening up pretty good with Hartman and McRoberts in there, expanded to 11 guys today. And now that'll probably contract again a little bit, but interesting to see with everybody healthy how those minutes get doled out, because most everybody who came in today played well.
All right, you're listening to the Assembly Call. I am Jared Morris here with Andy Bottoms, breaking down Indiana's 87-67 victory over Eastern Michigan. And again, you may say, okay, this is a win over Eastern Michigan. Why so excited? Well, you look, Indiana entered this game 87th in KenPom, and they jumped up to 76th after this victory. And so it's a good team that where even the computers value what you do against a team like Eastern Michigan. And the big jump for Indiana was offensively, where Indiana is now 38th in the country offensively and really starting to show some nice balance. And look, they're probably not going to shoot this well from 3 again, but it was nice to see that they have this, when they're patient, when they work it, when they get good shots. So that's good to see. Let's talk about Juwan Morgan here a little bit, Andy. Again, he's kind of been the headliner of the last 2 games. And I thought today what Juwan did was very similar to what he provided against Seton Hall. And again, that was a game where his contributions didn't jump off the page on the box score. But Archie, today in his pregame talk with Don Fisher, mentioned again how well he thought Juwan played in that Seton Hall game. And there are going to be games for Juwan Morgan, where maybe it's a little bit harder for him to get in the flow offensively in terms of scoring. But he is now showing him, this is 4 straight games, that no matter whether he's getting a lot of opportunities on offense or not, he's going to create them for himself with offensive rebounds. He's going to make good passes. He's going to set good screens. He's going to lead the team with hustle. I mean, he did get the banner, was mentioned in the banner moment today because of that great hustle. And I thought he played pretty solid defense on Minnie in the second half, and played some good defense on him in the first half too. Minnie just happened to hit some shots over him. So this was a #JaJuan Morgan things game where, again, doesn't jump out at the box score, but I thought he was very effective again. And, we're really, I think, as you look at what are the biggest positives that you can take from this 3-game stretch, South Florida, Arkansas State, and Eastern Michigan, to me, it's exactly what I wanted to see. Will Indiana's upperclassmen step up and really start to lead? And I think Robert Johnson has definitely done that. Juwan Morgan has definitely done that, both in terms of their attitude and their effort, but also their production. And it looks to me like Josh Newkirk kind of, joined that train with them today. And I think that's huge because all these contributions from the young guys are great, but Indiana is only going to be able to be as consistent, as good as its upperclassmen allow them to be. And I thought that was a really good sign from these 3 games that those guys seem ready to take that step. We'll see if they can keep it up against the better competition, but Juwan Morgan was chief among them, and this was another impressive performance.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought he did pretty well defensively. The numbers probably don't show that if you look at, how many scored when he guarded him, but I thought he made the challenging looks that he did make in the first half. He made those tough shots. So I think that was positive. And I think for him, a little bit difficult in a game like this where there was a lot of zone. He played well in the middle of it, at times had a couple assists. But more than that, didn't turn the ball over at all. We're just going to beat that into the ground, I'm sure. But, again, made good decisions. Didn't force shots and passes that weren't there. And out and reset, then so be it. But when the team was patient offensively, they were able to get good shots against the zone. And I thought he did a nice job of that, and was, just activity level and things like that. There will be games when he in a game like this and play well, and there'll be games when he might score 20 points like he did the other night. But I think it was one where his presence on the floor was still felt, even though he wasn't, racking up points and rebounds at quite the clip he had been over the last, 60 minutes of basketball leading up to this.
All right, Andy, let's begin our look ahead a little bit early right now and talk a little bit about this Duke game, which is coming up. Because, again, 2 weeks ago, I didn't feel – obviously, I've been predicting Indiana to beat Duke since the game was scheduled. And I haven't officially backed off that yet. I said I wanted to kind of take a wait and see. And I certainly wanted to see Indiana play better over these 3 games. They have. And I just looked, and Texas is up 64-48 on Duke right now. So that certainly makes me feel a little bit better. So I was not anticipating being able to feel – quite as good right now going into that game. And who knows, maybe Duke comes back and whatever. But frankly, I feel like Indiana has put itself in position. This is the important point I want to make, to have earned some confidence heading into that game. And this is something that Archie Miller has talked about. You really have to earn your confidence. And certainly I don't think a whole lot happened over the first few games for Indiana to do that. But with what they've been able to do in these 3 games, again, the competition hasn't been great, although it was a step up in competition today. But I think Indiana has done some things to earn some confidence, and more importantly, to earn some confidence playing Archie Miller basketball, because he's now really got some examples on tape of, look, guys, when you hustle, you create extra possessions, and we're really efficient on offense. When you don't turn the ball over, we get extra possessions, and we're efficient on offense. When we play tough, gritty defense and keep guys out of the lane from the perimeter and control guys inside, we can be pretty good defensively. So what I'm saying works. I know it's a tough transition, but if we do it, it will work. And I think that's so important that over these 3 games, it's not like Indiana just reverted into some old habits and those old habits worked and you won, but it's maybe not, that meaningful. I really think these victories were meaningful in the fact that they progressively played more and more consistently Archie Miller style basketball heading into this Duke game. And that gives me confidence, and I think it should give the guys some confidence.
Yeah, I definitely think had that Duke game come at a different point, even in the middle of some of these 3 games, I think we all feel a lot different about it. But yeah, they've played well. They've had the growth that I think that you talked about that we wanted to see. And yeah, who knows? I mean, who knows what happens? Duke's going to play their third game of the PK80 on Sunday. So they'll be getting back, flying cross country, getting back, then getting to Bloomington. So yeah, right now Texas is shooting about 60+% on 2-pointers, which we know IU's done well. So Texas has a 14-point lead and is 4 of 20 from 3. Now, Duke playing a ton of zone against Michigan State. That against IU or not, I don't really know. But they did show a lot of that against Michigan State, I think, with some fear of their front line and things like that. So it'll be an interesting game. I think people will have, the atmosphere there was going to be electric regardless, but I think to have a team coming in off of its best performance of the season will only help that. And really it'll just be a matter of whether guys can come out and not be too hyped up. But I think it'll be a far more interesting game than I probably would have answered, if you asked me the same question a week ago.
No, that you're absolutely right. There's going to be legitimate belief in the arena. And there are different things. It's like, you think back to the Kentucky game in 2012, right? Yeah, it was exciting because the number one team is coming in and there's excitement, but there was belief because they had beaten NC State. There was, I think fans actually legitimately believe, hey, maybe we can actually win a big game. And so, this wasn't on the road, and I don't think it was as important as that victory. But I think what this did, because I think Indiana, we're a smart fan base. I think everybody knew that Eastern Michigan was a good, solid team, and that to beat them by 20 is something impressive. That's going to up just the level of insanity at Simon Scott Assembly Hall, because there's going to be belief now that Indiana can come out and do this, and that hopefully we've put some of those early season struggles behind us. So obviously we got to come out and do it now, and it's a totally different ball game, playing the 150th ranked KenPom team and then maybe the most talented team in the country that has all these lottery picks. So it's not like those are equal in any way. But for a team that needed some confidence, I think they've earned some of that, and that's huge coming into such a big battle. So Indiana did exactly what it needed to do in these 3 games, and that's really big. All right, coming up in our final segment of this edition of the Assembly Call, we're going to hand out our game balls. Not so obvious today, so this will be interesting. We'll do a little bit more detailed look ahead at Duke and what they're bringing to Simon Scott Assembly Hall. And then we will also deliver our final thoughts on Indiana's victory over Eastern Michigan. That is next here on the Assembly Call. Stick with us. You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Jared Morris here with Andy Bottoms, breaking down Indiana's best victory of the season, its most impressive victory, 87-67 over Eastern Michigan at Simon Scott Assembly Hall on Friday afternoon. And let's go with our game balls, Andy. And again, it's been pretty easy, the choices the last couple of games, but I am curious to see who you're going to go with today.
Yeah, this is I guess where you don't have a clear-cut guy who's out there. You know what? Do I have to pick one guy, or can I go with it? Okay.
No, you got to pick a guy. It's still fun for everybody if we do that.
I was going to go with the bench collectively since they had played so well. I mean, they had 29 points and I think 29 points, 20 rebounds, I think, and 8 assists. All right, I won't do that up there. So I've passed them up the last couple, but I'll give it to Robert Johnson. Maybe this is a culmination of these 3 games and seeing him continue to shoot with a bit more confidence. But I thought that stretch that you mentioned in the second half was important, because I found myself thinking we've all got into this place where it's like no lead feels safe. And so I was like, oh, if they score here, it's down to 12 or whatever it was. And he really just, kind of took over the game in that moment, and kind of has become a little bit of the closer that this team has needed over these last couple games. And I think, those plays made it really good. That big 3-pointer that I mentioned in the first half had a good hustle play to, chase somebody down and knock the ball off their leg to create prevent an easy basket. I think that was in the first half. I just thought another solid all around game from him. 1 turnover, didn't rebound quite as well or as much as he had in other games, but I thought just another solid performance from him. Didn't get caught up in trying to do too much against the zone, took shots when they were there, and got a better shot when it was possible, and made some smart passes that may have led to other passes. So I'll give it to him, but I think there were any number of guys that you could have given it to. And if I could have gone away from the one guy, I probably would have just given it to the bench, because I think those guys provided a huge spark and a huge lift.
The bench did provide a big spark, but it was nice to see that the starters, got off to decent starts and kind of held their own, because Indiana really has had to be digging out of some holes recently with how they've started games. And today it was 5-5 at the under 16-minute timeout in the first half. So I misspoke earlier, but Indiana did outscore Eastern Michigan 10-8 between that first TV timeout and the next one. So a 15-13 advantage, and that's big. It doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a nice solid start. You're not getting off to a bad start. You're not having to play from behind. And then I thought they did something similar in the second half. I think Eastern Michigan might have had like a 2-point advantage right off the bat, but then Indiana was able to go on a 12-4 run right after that and push that lead up. And so that was big. And so for that reason, I'm going to stick with the starters, and I'm going to go with Josh Newkirk, who I thought was really terrific today in a bounce back performance. Like I said, clearly his best performance. And again, the two things that I liked most from Josh today, number one was just the defensive activity, because I don't think he's been showing that as much in the awareness, but he was pretty locked in today. And I think, the attention to detail and just the awareness that he showed on a couple of those steals, particularly the one, Andy, where you said he looked like a free safety. I actually tweeted out that he looked like Earl Thomas on that play, coming and intercepting that pass. That was good to see. But then just the confidence that he shot the ball with. I mean, that has been something that has been such short supply this season for Indiana. Just guys who just with their body language as they're shooting it, where you feel confident that it's going in. And he just really stepped up and made some big shots, obviously going 5 for 6. And look, I don't know, maybe it's ridiculous to say, but he made those shots. And then frankly, it looked like Robert Johnson was more confident after that. And sometimes you see your teammates, making some shots and going in, and that can help get you going too. So, Robert Johnson's a senior. I don't think he necessarily needs to see someone else's shots go in to have confidence. But it was nice to see Josh make those shots. And him stepping up and doing that led to Indiana's best shooting day of the season. And it couldn't have come at a better time, because obviously Indiana's going to have to make some shots if they're going to compete against Duke. Nice to see that they did, and nice to see Josh Newkirk bounce back. I think maybe 2 post-game emails ago, we send out a post-game email every day or after every game, and one of the sections is lingering questions. And I think it was just 2 games ago, one of my lingering questions was, what is Josh Newkirk's future in this rotation? Because he had a couple straight games where he had just looked, really disengaged, and obviously Al Durham was stepping up and taking minutes. Well, Josh Newkirk showed today, he's not going to give up his minutes that easily, and played terrific. And like you said, because he was able to do that, Archie Miller was able to sit Devontae Green down on a day when he wasn't playing very well. So game ball to Josh Newkirk. Really nice to see Indiana's senior backcourt stepping up like it did today. And you know what? It's nice to have so many options to choose from. That's a good thing for this team. I think if we have more of these game ball segments where it's hard to choose who gets it, that's going to be a good thing moving forward. We will happily accept that challenge if it means more impressive Indiana performances. All right, Andy, let's talk a little bit more about Duke. We've kind of mentioned some reasons why it's reasonable to have confidence, a little more confidence heading into that game, to think that Indiana can really compete and maybe give the Simon Skjodt Assembly Hall a chance to work its magic, because it can only work its magic if the team, does its part and makes it a competitive game. And so certainly I feel like we can feel better about that after today's game. But what specifically is Duke bringing in? Because obviously they are quite a talented team.
Well, as of right now, they have the number 1 most efficient offense in the country, so they bring that. So that'll be a good early test for IU's defense. I mean, they've scored at least 88 points in 5 of their first 6 games, and over 90 in 4 of the first 6. So that part's concerning. They have a really strong offensive rebounding percentage, 45% so far. Now, outside of the Michigan State game, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they've played anybody all that good. So who knows what these numbers will look like after the Texas game, which they've cut the lead to like 6 the last time I looked at it since we talked about that.
I jinxed it.
How could you? But I
don't want them coming in off a loss. I want them coming back.
Well, they got another game in Portland either way. But
okay, good.
So, offensive rebounding is a big one. Marvin Bagley, talented freshman, really active on the glass on both ends of the floor. Grayson Allen had that great game against Michigan State. Hasn't shot the ball particularly well since then. So you've got him, but you've got a pretty young team. I mean, that's really, kind of transition over time. Trayvon Duval is a point guard. He's a freshman who, if you can get him to, take outside shots, you're in a pretty good spot. Hasn't shot the ball particularly well. Wendell Carter, a good freshman big man. Gary Trent Jr., son of the Shaq of the Mac, is another freshman there. So they're playing a ton of freshmen, as has been in recent years. But that hasn't really affected their offense, and at some point, talent just wins out. So they're right around top 50 in effective field goal percentage, turnover rate, and as I said, offensive rebounding, they've been really good. And then defensively, they're in the 40s at this point. They've done a really good job of limiting free throws to their opponent's free throw rate. They're 8th. So that's a big one. Like IU have done a good job of limiting to opponents shooting just 42% from 2-point range. So, and a pretty high block rate. So, kind of a mirror image of IU in some ways in those couple stats. So it'll be interesting to see, defensively, other than not putting people on the line and the 2-point shooting is out. They don't turn you over a great deal. Don't really lock up the defensive glass, but a young team. And I think that'll be the biggest thing. This will be their first true road game when you look at their schedule. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how they react in what everyone expects will be a pretty crazy environment. So I think that's, something that I don't know how you really account for that from a statistical perspective, but you've got guys who have been that Michigan State game was a good game, was really up and down. They played most of that without Bagley. So they played a tremendous game there. This will be, kind of a different level of challenge, not necessarily the opponent being as talented, but the venue providing being such a factor in the game.
That has always been one of my main reasons for why Indiana is going to win this game. As long as Indiana can do its part and play solid basketball, you give yourself a chance against a young team for them to really be rattled, And I think it's obviously going to be very important for Indiana to get off to a good start. We've seen in some of these games where Indiana has upset teams early. They get off to a really good start, while the other team is just kind of like trying to get their bearings over the first 8 to 12 minutes. And a lot of times Indiana's kind of holding on at the end, so you need to build a little bit of a lead, make some shots, keep the crowd engaged. But, look, and that's the thing, is for Indiana to be able to do that, they can't turn the ball over. They've got to play solid. They've got to avoid, stretches of just defensive breakdowns on 4 or 5 straight possessions and then compounding it with turnovers. And that seemed like kind of a ridiculous ask as recently as a few games ago. But now it seems like something that's a little bit more reasonable to expect that Indiana might be able to do. So obviously it's an uphill challenge. Duke brings in a great team, but I'm not backing off my prediction. I still think that this team is capable of winning that game. And when you bring a bunch of young guys into Simon Scott Assembly Hall, I think it bodes really well for the home team. And I have no doubt that Simon Scott Assembly Hall is going to bring its best on Wednesday night. And I think these 3 games, which have led up to it, are really going to help contribute to that. So really, really looking forward to that game. Obviously, it's going to be just a fun atmosphere, a fun game to watch. And hopefully the Hoosiers are able to play at their best and come out on top. All right, you are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Remember that because you are an Assembly Call listener, you get 15% off your entire order at HoosierProud.com. But don't use the promo code Assembly over the next few days, because if you use the promo code Hoosier Holidays, you actually get 30% off. And as Andy mentioned earlier, he used it. So definitely, if you've been thinking about checking out HoosierProud.com and supporting them, obviously supporting them is a great way to also support us. And so go to HoosierProud.com, check out their awesome designs, pick up an Assembly Call shirt while you're there, and use that promo code Hoosier Holidays, and you get 30% off the entire order, and then with no surprise shipping charges on that. It's funny you mentioned that, Andy, because I ordered something. It wasn't a shirt. It was like this canvas print. And I got a great deal on it. Like the whole thing was free, but then shipping was like $19. And I was like, well, what the heck? I mean, and obviously it's more expensive to ship a canvas print than a shirt, but you're right. Sometimes they do that and they get you on the shipping and handling. But Hoosier Proud's not going to do that to you. So check them out at HoosierProud.com. All right, Andy, I think this is going to be the last show for a while that we'll have to do without Ryan. I can't imagine that anything is going to keep him from the Duke show, which is good because Ryan is especially fun after Duke games, I'm sure. So we'll have him back. But for now, it's just us for last call. So your final thoughts on today's victory over Eastern Michigan and really this 3-game stretch leading up to the Duke game. What are you thinking about it?
I mean, this game was just really fun to watch. I mean, it was a competitive game in the first half. They were back and forth, both teams making shots and playing well. And it was, I think some of these other games, it was, you're kind of looking, I don't know, you're looking for so many different things to happen or to go well, or did they do this right or do this wrong? And this game actually just had a good flow to it and felt like you could just sit back and enjoy the fact that they were playing really well. And that was, a welcome sight. And I think when you look at that over these last 3 games, like the amount that they've built, if you go back to the first half of that Seton Hall game was really good. The second half of the South Florida game was really good. Parts of each half against Arkansas State were really good. And I thought today for a full game was pretty good. And so I think you continue to see them building, and the season goes quicker than you think it does. And there's 6 games into the season, which is about 20% of the games at this point. And when you kind of take a step back and look at it that way, is about one game different than what you thought it would be. I don't know that a lot of people predicted to win at Seton Hall in the first kind of true road test. And so you're one game off of the pace that most everybody expected. And you've seen a lot of growth since where they were to start. And I think that's what's encouraging. And that's the thing that any game where you play Duke would be exciting. But I think the growth that they've shown over that period, say what you want about the competition, that's fine. But some of the things that everybody has been watching for are really things that you're watching for independent of whoever they play. If they played against 5-1-0 and played against no one, just ran a shell of the offense and, tried to do things that way, you'd still look for the same things that I think they've done a good job at. So feels like the message is starting to get there. These 3 games have been kind of a little bit of a break in some ways in between to be able to step back and work on things. I think they got everything they wanted out of those games, in terms of, everybody's healthy at this point. You got Colin Hartman back to at least be able to play a few minutes. You worked on some things. You saw growth, and it ended with their best start to finish game of the season in my eyes so far. So that's a good spot to be in with a really tough stretch of games coming in. But I think I feel better about their chances to maybe win 2 of those games than I probably did a week ago. And so from a fan perspective, which ultimately at the root of this is what we all are, is encouraging. And so the fact that we've been on here 3 games in a row and debated between upperclassmen to who to give the game ball to, and each of the kind of 6 we've given out over these last 2 games has been some combination of juniors and seniors, and so I think that's a positive thing. But you can also point to the freshmen playing really well. So certainly a tall challenge, both literally and figuratively against Duke, but I feel good about how this team is playing heading into that game, and I think they should feel good about how they're playing and go into that game with a lot of confidence that should hopefully only be bolstered by what I expect on every level to be a raucous crowd at Assembly Hall.
Oh man, no question about it. I agree with everything that you said there, Andy. And when we sat here after the Seton Hall game and Indiana's 1-2, and you're not feeling very good about where things are. We talked about how, these P words, right? Like we needed to have patience and we needed to have perspective, patience because, there's a new system being installed, and perspective because, especially with older guys who have played one way for 2 or 3 years, they're having to unlearn that and they're having to play a different way. And you're also trying to work young guys in, and obviously you have to have patience with them. And that, if we had patience and perspective and Indiana did their part to show progress, we'd be on the right path, right? And maybe we'd have a prayer in this Duke game. Because again, after that Seton Hall game, you kind of look at it and you're thinking, man, that's just going to be a death march for Indiana. But I think now, as you look at these 3 games, I think Indiana has showed progress. And so I think the patience and the perspective that I think, the team has basically been forcing fans to have is being rewarded, if you were there, because I think you've seen the progress that you've wanted. And Andy, as you mentioned, in really key areas, the keys for what Archie Miller is trying to get this team to do, which is, not turn the ball over and play smarter and have better shot selection. That's the other thing that, we really didn't talk about on this show is, there's one thing to limit turnovers, but do you also limit the really bad shots? And you probably have to go back and watch the film and chart it from every game. But just off the top of my head, I feel like there were fewer really poor shots, like egregious, like why are you shooting that today, than we've seen. And you add all that stuff up and it leads to a really efficient offense like we saw today for Indiana. Obviously they've still got, some defensive areas to iron out, and that's not surprising given what this program has been defensively. But I think Indiana showed some progress there too over these 3 games. So all in all, a lot of progress for Indiana over the last 3 games. I think a lot of reasons for Indiana fans to be excited. And now it's time. Hey, you know what? We've done this against, a couple of mid 200 teams. Now we did it today against kind of a middle, 100s team. Let's step the competition up now. And we're going to play a Final Four contender against Duke. We're going to play 4 other really good teams. Let's go and let's see what these guys are made of. I was not ready for this a week ago. I feel ready for it now as a fan. I certainly think the team is more ready for it to accept this challenge, and I'm excited to see what Indiana can do here over these next 5 games. And it all starts Wednesday against Duke. Obviously, we will be here. I know it's a late start, 8:30, so it's going to be an especially late one for Andy. These are the games when I really appreciate living in the Central Time Zone, and when Ryan, I'm sure, really appreciates living in the Pacific Time Zone, and Andy wonders why he's degrees, living in the East Coast, but well, in the Midwest, but on the Eastern time zone. But no matter what, no matter how late that game ends, we will be here for you on the assembly call to break it all down. And definitely, if you have not gone to assemblycall.com/join and gotten on our email list, make sure you do it. Andy wrote the most recent post-game analysis email. I thought he did a really good job with it, and we're going to try and vary the perspectives that we give you. But those are 1,500 to 2,000 word analysis that we only send out to our email subscribers. It goes out to about 4,200 people right now. We'd love to see that number go up. We don't post it on our blog. It's just via email. We want that to be, special for you guys who really support us by listening, by supporting us on the email list as well. So go to assemblycall.com/join, get on that newsletter. And as always, thank you for listening. Thank you for hanging out with us so much over this Thanksgiving weekend with 2 games in 3 days. And we look forward to talking with you again Wednesday night for the IU Duke postgame show, and then we'll be back with our regular Thursday night show to further celebrate and break down that Indiana victory over Duke on Assembly Call Radio as well. All right, until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers.